Busy isn't better. We don't get more done. Busy is actually the opposite. Busyness creates havoc in our lives.
Peggy Sullivan helps people do more by doing less. She's the founder of She Can, and her work's been seen on ABC, CBS, and Forbes. Peggy shares how less stress and fewer tasks can bring more health, joy, and success.
So why do we keep doing it? Is it because we don't know any better? Or is it simply because we have an old tape, at least somewhat effective in getting us to where we've gotten to? And if we change that, would we run the risk that we wouldn't be as successful?
Our hustle society tells us busyness is good. It's a status symbol. It's a sign of importance. And the other thing is that we don't always think about how busyness affects the people around us. But I think the biggest reason, not because we glorify hustle society. Every time we get something done, we get a hit of adrenaline. So we want to do it again. And that is why busyness is such a problem, because we get rewarded with the dopamine hit.
The idea of job security is outdated as a landline. If you haven't been in a search for a while, it's probable you will at some point, by choice or not. Most executives admit to staying way too long, or sense what's coming and justify staying anyway. Here, there's another reason. The faulty belief that navigating to what's next will inevitably be worse and has to suck. Screw that. Loren has spent a lifetime in corporate and executive search, calling bullshit on stale career advice that most still use. This is Career Blast in a Half, the career podcast for executives ready to cut past outdated career advice to fuel your outcomes now. So let's go.
One of the most common things that happens in life, but especially during a job search, is not just the overwhelm, but this old idea, this myth that somehow the busier we are, the more results we're going to get, the more productive we are. And so we keep piling and piling and piling on. But the issue is that we all, and myself included, I look at my to-do list and sometimes I just want to cry. And I recognize that I'm moving into this place, and I see this all the time with my clients too, into what we call time poverty. Our guest today is Peggy Sullivan, and she knows a lot about time poverty and specifically around why it's killing your job search and the 911, the recovery plan to get there. Peggy, I know that this is a very precious time. In fact, we are doing this recording on Memorial Day at around noon. And so I am excited that you are here and made specific time for us and to come and serve all of our amazing listeners, because what you do is the antidote to what they are struggling with. And so please tell us, why are you like the time queen? Why did you become the person who's been busting the myths around busyness? And why is that something that you feel so not only passionate about, but why are you making so many waves within multiple industries?
Hi, Loren. This is Peggy, and I am a busyness addict in recovery. And for me, there's always been too much to do and too little time to do it. I was running hard and working fast until I had a series of wake-up calls I just could not ignore. One night, I came home from work, tired and exhausted, but very, very hungry. So I opened the cupboard to find anything I could to eat. And I landed on a bag of stale pistachio nuts. And I chomped them down really happily until I felt this pulling on my leg. And I looked down. And it's my cat, Dazzle. And he looks up and he says, "Mommy, feed me. I haven't eaten for over 10 hours. So I throw some kibbles into his dish and I fall asleep on the couch. And I wake up to this gagging noise and I look up. It's my cat, Dazzle, throwing up pistachio nuts. I look down. I see remnants of cat food in my hand. I was in such a burnt out haze. I just ate cat food for dinner. And there were a lot of things that were happening in my life that maybe were a little less funny, but I was in a mindless haze and I was really paying a big price tag for my busyness. My husband of 18 years left me. He said I wasn't spending enough time with him. 6 months later, trying to be super mom, I had a stress-related heart attack. And while I was recouping, I learned that the job that I've been working so hard, the big promotion, couldn't be mine because I was in rehab for 10 days. So busy isn't better. We don't get more done. Busy is actually the opposite. Busyness creates havoc in our lives.
Okay, so now I got to ask the $10 million question. So why do we keep doing it? Why do we all, is it because we don't know any better? Or is it simply because we have an old tape that has been, at least somewhat effective in getting us to where we've gotten to? And if we change that, would we run the risk that we wouldn't be as, air quotes, successful?
I have a two-prong answer for you. The first is our hustle society tells us busyness is good. It's a status symbol. It's a sign of importance. That doctor's so busy, I can't get in to see him for 6 months. He must be really, really good. Or my next door neighbor, he literally leaves at 7 a.m. every morning and doesn't get home until 7:30 p.m. He misses dinner with his 4 beautiful children, but hey, he's a rock star. He's been promoted 3 times in the last 5 years. And the other thing is that we don't always think about how busyness affects the people around us. I have a really dear friend. Her name is Paula, and we used to spend girls' night out together, and we would solve the problems of the world. And Paula got a new job, a new boyfriend, a new house, and a new dog. Paula had no time for Peggy. And I really missed it. It made me realize that there's a ripple effect to all this busyness. It hurts the people around us that we're trying to teach, manage, mentor, be with, love. It just does. But I think the biggest reason, not because we glorify hustle society, I think the biggest reason is because busyness is addictive. Every time we get something done, we get a hit of adrenaline. So we want to do it again and again and again and again and again and again. And that is why busyness is such a problem, because we get rewarded with a dopamine hit.
Okay. All of this is like hitting home big time for me. And now I want to take it to our audience, right? Because they're in a job search, right? And so now each day that they are on that search is something else. It could be anxiety over the indefinite period of time that they will be on the market. It could be the fear if they're not busy hustling, every day is another day that they think that their bank account is at risk. So if busy is not better, all right, how do people, especially executives who are used to a lot of moving and shaking and all that stuff, how do they construct that time so that busyness isn't a deficit, that the focus is an asset? How do we flip that script?
Yeah. I mean, the reality is people who follow my process get back 5 to 7 hours a week to do what's important to them. So people, when they start to get time back to repurpose towards important things, they start to say, this is better. I have time for what I enjoy. I have time to be strategic. I have time to focus on what matters. So if you want to dig in, I'd be happy to share with you the busy busting framework, because I worked on it for 8 years, 10 years actually, testing, what combination of things work. And it's kind of not intuitive what I teach, but it works. And it works for 95% of the population. So
Bring it
something
on.
about it and the combination of things is working. Step one in the busy busting process is subtraction. It's about eliminating low value activities. We all get stuck in these things that I call busy traps. They chew up our time, our resources. Maybe we get caught in the email rabbit hole. Maybe we go to too many meetings. 83% of the population spends a third of their time in meetings, and only 30% are productive. That's a whole bunch of time you can get back. And the funny thing is, people are always afraid to ask, is it okay if I don't go to your meeting? I feel like I should be there. But when you think about the contribution you need to be making at work, then that particular meeting to be in the know is less valuable. And so eliminating low value activities is important. I always give the example.
Wait, I want to ask you so that we are benchmarking this. What is the biggest culprit of a low value like thingy or task or time suck within the job search? What are the one or two biggest, please, stay away from these?
Yeah, I'd say social media and our 24/7 on communications. When we let interruptions kick in, ding, 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 you've got mail. So I have an example of that. My husband knocked on my door the other day, love of my life, and said, "Do you have a minute?" And I was engrossed in this Excel spreadsheet. I was a moving and a grooving and doing what if formulas and all these really great things. And I look up and I say, "Sure, dear, I'll take 5 minutes." And he tells me that there's no ketchup in the house, no ketchup. So we have to have burgers without ketchup. Well, at that point in the day, I really didn't care about ketchupless burgers. I cared about my spreadsheet. And it took me 9 minutes to get back to where I left off because I was paying what you call a switching task. So bouncing around from one thing to another, to another, to another is one of the main culprits. You do a little bit on a lot of stuff, but you never reach the finish line.
Okay. So to that end, you're in the switching around and that, you're playing on LinkedIn. You're also applying here. You have an email over here. You have an interview that just came in. How do you stop it?
Well, I think one thing that is really important, you eliminate the low value things. And then when you're looking for a job, it's hard to keep your energy up. It's just like a constant cloud hanging over you. So step 2 in my busy busting framework really works well for people in that position. And it's a step I call mojo making. We tend to think that happiness is a destination, a thing. I'm going to be happy when I get a job. I'm going to be happy when I get a new house. I'm going to be happy when I get an interview. But happiness is not about a destination, a thing, a place, because too many times we don't have control over it. And happiness is a superpower. When we're happy, our brain lights up like a Christmas tree. We get to focus. We have more energy. We're more charismatic. We have the ability to fight chronic disease, and we live longer. And so you've got to switch that mindset and say, no, happiness is not a destination, not a thing, but it's the little micro moments I make for myself. One of the exercises I do in front of a workshop with people is what I call the chocolate ritual. And I will pass out a piece of dark chocolate. And I will tell everybody for 3 minutes, I want you to close your eyes, smell the chocolate, just really pull in that delicious smell, and then pop it in your mouth and just focus on how the chocolate tastes. Now, this is an activity that takes 2 minutes, but 100% of the time, people have told me it's been like pushing the reset button.
Mm.
And so you've got to do small little things like that. They can be dance parties. They can be spending quality time with your pet. It could be walking to the corner back. It could be so many things, but you need to hard code them into your day and make sure that you do it, 3 or 4 times a day. It just really gets endorphins going and you can focus more. You're happier more. It's just so much of a better way to live and be positive.
I'm going to do that today. I really need to do a little reset because I'm definitely at the borderline of over busy. I don't even know if that's a word, but I need some busters. So thank you for that one. I am blowing the lid off of our best kept secret, our 30-day blast program. Yeah, you heard it. 30 days. We have seen so much success for this program that past clients have landed in that 30 days and increased their compensation 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, over 100%. Now, not everybody lands and earns that much in 30 days, but my point is it prepares you. And in 30 days, if you're not out of there with a changed mindset and changed clear and simple ways to be able to navigate the market this year, then we'll gladly refund your misery and you can go back to applying now. Check out the link below for the next 30-day blast, and we would love to have you there because we live for your success, and that's what's really important. See you then. You talked about low ROI, and that also put my brain into one of your other busting methodologies and part of your framework, which was really about mastering the metrics. So there are so many different variables, so many different tasks, projects, initiatives that are happening on any of our schedules. And for job seekers, it seems like there is extra high on urgency. So how do you employ this metrics that matter and mastering them? How do you do that so that you are not also creating another spreadsheet that now you have to master?
Yeah, we all really love time management tools, right? Time management is a $10 billion industry that's expected to grow into a $13 billion industry in the next couple of years. But here's the thing. I've done research with thousands of people, and 94% of those people who use time management don't have time for what's important.
Exactly.
So there's something flawed with time management. It's just not enough because just because you manage your time doesn't mean you're working on what is urgent, what's important. And there are a lot of those matrix boxes where, how you should delegate and that. And I just love everything that's easy. It's intuitive. It's not hard to remember. So for me, I love to tell people, use your values management, not time management. And when I started teaching people how to use their values, I found that some people were just struggling with how to identify their values. For example, I went to Google and did a workshop there. And I asked people what their values were. And no big surprise, they Googled their values, right? Or they looked at their next door neighbor. What do you got? And so it made me really curious. What are the values that make us feel like our cup is full, that life is good? And I researched 12,000 individuals, and where I ended up was there are 4 main values. The first one is what I call energy management. The second one is what I call human connection, not connecting with your phone, not connecting with email, human connection. Growth is the third. My dad always used to say, "Toots, a day without learning something new is a lost opportunity." And he would say it just like that. And I would always say, "Dad, why do you say that?" He says, when you learn new things, you stretch your resiliency muscle. And you learn that you always get through hard things. You get to the other side. So keep on challenging yourself and learning something new. It could be something as a new language. It could be, I've been stepping into Excel lately and using a lot of formulas that's new to me. I've been leaning into AI where I was using it, but I wasn't using it as much as I could. So I'm constantly learning. And then the fourth thing is authenticity. But with authenticity, what I ask people to do is turn it upside down. Instead of thinking about me, think about we. Think about asking for help. Think about accepting people with different views, different vantage points, different ways of solving a problem. And so for job seekers, I would be like, tell everyone that you're looking for a job and ask them if they know of anything or anybody you should speak to who can help in that effort. Because when we do things as we versus me, we're better together and we're much more successful faster.
Those are winning. I love the idea of aligning to your values and your time, those two things together. So here we are. It's Monday. It's a holiday, or whenever you listen to this, right? There's going to be tomorrow. And so you talked a little bit about what you should start subtracting. If you had one wish, what would be the one subtraction that you would say to somebody, if you do this, you will have, the balance of your time will be more fairly allocated. You won't feel so overwhelmed and or exhausted, and you will see more results. What would that subtraction be?
The one thing that usually works all the time is to tell people to stop scrolling social media, tell people only to look at email 2-3 times a day, just limit changing your brain from working on something to then doing short little tasks that kind of pull you out of that groove. And what I do is I actually block out time. And I tell myself I'm only going to look at email from 11:30 to 12 and 3:30 to 4. And I will literally let everybody I know, if it's important, pick up the phone. I will answer the phone. But if you're going to send an email, which is fine, please know you're not going to get a return until it's those times of day. And that usually, for most people, cuts back around 2-3 hours a week. It's pretty good.
Buffer and then really police it, right? I think that that's really important what you just said, because it's easy to take our eyes and minds off of the task or the thing at hand. I want to just ask you this, because a lot of folks are really unhappy in their current role, really unhappy. And that has all kinds of consequences, right? Many are busy, like you described, and so many of the anecdotes that you shared in the earlier portion of this show. How would you respond to somebody when they say, I'm miserable, but I'm too busy here to go and look for or to seek out something that's better? How would you respond to that?
I love when I've got a great story to illustrate my point. So I'm going to tell you a 60-second story. I used to work at Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I managed the marketing and communications department. And the other person who was on my floor, who managed hundreds of employees, managed marketing and new product development and sales. And he had the opportunity to bring in a huge client, biggest ever. So he was just, we got to win this. We got to win this. We'll make our numbers for the year. And as he got closer and closer, and he was putting so much pressure on himself for perfection, for that thing that was really different and really creative that would land them this business, he realized that he only had a day or two left to finish off this project, and he wasn't getting it done. So he pulled his whole team inside a conference room at around 4 o'clock and asked them to work late and help him. And so they all rolled up their sleeves and they started to help. And they were so tired at the end of the day. They were getting some ideas, but it really, really wasn't working. And so as they're sitting there just trying to really push a wet noodle without a lot of success, they hear a knock, knock, knock at the door. They look up and it's the security. Now, keep in mind that when I worked for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, it was New York State. I was in upstate New York. So I was in Buffalo. And so what happened to Randy was this security guard was like, there's a snowstorm out there. There's 6 feet of snow. You cannot go anywhere. There is a driving ban. So Randy thinks to himself, yes, I'm going to make these people come up with a solution. We're going to work until we drop, until we get it done. That's what we're going to do. And he lifted up his head and he looked at his whole team. Number one, he realized they were exhausted. But number two, he really thought that his relationships were solely transactional. He didn't know the people that he was working with, even though many of them had been with him for many, many years. He didn't know what they liked, what they disliked, what was important to them, what were their values. So this particular team spent the next 6 hours not working on a deadline project, but on human connection and understanding each other a little bit further. Now, the team had called that the best ever meeting they had, which says something in itself. But at the end of that night, they all went home, they got sleep, they came to work a couple of days later, and all of a sudden, they were working like a well-oiled machine. They understood each other. They switched certain types of tasks that weren't working. They knew what was important. And about 6 weeks later, they looked at metrics, departmental metrics, and not only had their performance gone up and their sales gone up, but also they had a 34% increase in employee engagement. So, I think if you're feeling unhappy, maybe the people around you are unhappy too. And maybe what you need to do is to just talk and to get to know each other. Maybe you don't like performing one task, but you love performing another. And somebody else loves performing that task and they've got something that they don't like to do. But my thought is, to raise your hand and say, hey, I started this job with so much passion, so much energy. I'm losing a little bit. I want to get it back. Can we work together to figure out how that happens?
So in the scenario with the person who is in their current job and wondering whether they have time, how can you translate that? Is that a discussion with your husband? How does that manifest itself so that you are going into this not as this is another thing I gotta do and that like long face and dread. How do you approach that so that you are in a situation where it's additive, not necessarily a big drain?
Yeah, my husband loves to watch TV. I don't. He loves to watch TV. He's usually out and about during the day, but come 5:30, 6 o'clock, there he is for another 4 or 5 hours. Personally, I don't like watching TV. I need to move. So we'll eat dinner together. We'll communicate. And I'll say, dear, I'm going to go on a 1-hour walk. I let him do his thing. I do my thing. And then when I get back, we just sit down and talk. And sometimes I'll watch TV with him or do what he wants or what he needs. But we make space for the things that are important to us as individuals. And then we make space for things that we both enjoy as a couple.
Yeah. I love that because I often say we do what we prioritize. And so if it's that important to you, I'm not saying add more just to pile it on. I'm saying make the space for it and align that to your values so that you reach that better place. Because it's easy. I mean, it's so easy to say, I'm too busy. And then there's another consequence or something that's going to show up down the road. I would love you to please talk about your book. And I also would love you to also please Beyond Busyness. And what do we need to know so that we get this book and also apply it?
Well, first and foremost, I'm not a traditional speaker. I'm not a traditional coach. I believe that when we have fun, when we're doing something, when we laugh out loud, when we learn through storytelling and exercises, that is the best way to learn. So this book is a book that you can read a chapter, learn a ton, put it down, and then go back to it. But there is a ton of fun, funny stories in there. And people laugh out loud as soon as they start to read my book because it's just fun to read. And at the end of each chapter, there are some very easy exercises to follow that give you a taste of what it's like to hone that skill. And I don't know, everybody I've given the book to who has bought the book, it's actually a bestseller in terms of workplace enjoyment. And I think that speaks for itself.
Peggy Sullivan, thank you so much for making this fun, for making busy and busting it like something that is so doable and practical in your search, out of your search, as a leader, as a parent, all of it. And we will, of course, include the show notes, where to find you, where to buy this book, and also, of course, where they can work with you, hire you, because I know you're also a keynote speaker. So for you, dear listener, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening and for addressing and owning your busyness addiction, if that applies to you, because only you can diagnose it. And separately, we love you. We want to thank you for listening. And if you haven't already, please leave us an Apple Podcast review. This is how we grow. This is a labor of love, and you guys are lifting us up. So thank you again, and we will see you next week.
Thank you, Loren.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining today. We appreciate your listening ears. Big time. We ask this: use these tools, not tomorrow, right now, and share them by spreading the love, leaving us a rating and subscribe so you don't miss the next career blast and a half. Most of all, thank you for you.